How you doing, guys? Dr. Thompson here with Exemplify Health Center. Happy day before Thanksgiving. Hope you guys are having a great Wednesday. So I wanted to jump on with you guys before everyone enjoy their Thanksgiving festivities, and I wanted to go over some things that I saw pop up in the news and explain it to you. Okay, and it has to do with the new drug that's coming out from Pfizer that is considered a revolutionary drug that's considered an antiviral to COVID, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to show you about this drug, about how it works. And I'm also going to show you how there are other drugs that work similarly. But I'm also going to show you how they take these drugs, and really what they do is they take what is natural and then replicate it into the synthetic, which becomes much more profitable. Okay. So before I do it, I wanted to show you guys something, because I know I've been getting a lot of messages about, hey, show some blood work, post, what. And so I wanted to show you just one real quick, because yes, we have gotten some blood work back from one of our test subjects, and saw something that was interesting when we looked at this. And we got some testing just based off of some of the symptoms this individual was having at 8 weeks post, and wanted to look at a couple of different things in order to see why this individual was actually feeling this way. And I'm going to go over this. I'm just going to touch on this, and I'm going to go over this in a lot more detail once I have a little bit more time after Thanksgiving, and really dive into it as far as like initially, then pre, then post one, post two, and then looking afterwards and seeing how in this individual, what is happening specifically in their body. We found something that was really interesting, because when you look at this, this is a very high level, and this is something your doctor's not measuring, I would say hardly ever, and it's called homocysteine. Homocysteine will tend to build up when there are some issues with methylation and the ability to be able to recycle what's known as homocysteine into methionine. And that is what allows for this process of methylation inside of your cells. Methylation isn't something that's fancy, but it is the most abundant reaction that's taking place. And it has a lot to do with repair of your DNA, known as methylation, synthesizing specific neurotransmitters, adrenal hormones. And it also has to do with inflammatory levels associated with heart attack. And it also has to do with a person's ability to be able to carry out what's known as phase 2 detoxification. So it happens mostly at the liver, but just think is cellular DNA repair, detoxification, healthy cardiovascular function, and then also making adrenal hormones, and then also with making specific neurotransmitters. And this is why we'll see in a lot of people, when this is elevated, they tend to have cardiovascular disease, they tend to be in a lot of pain, they tend to have very low energy, they tend to be very toxic as well. And we've even seen these people who have issues with things like depression and schizophrenia and things like that. Guys, not everything is all mental. There's a chemical component to it. There's a physical component to it. And that's why you can't just nail something down as simple as having some kind of neurotransmitter dysfunction that's going on. The body wasn't created that way. The body was created to adapt, be healthy, and survive. And it's always working towards that. This would explain, by looking at this marker, why this individual has not been feeling very well. And in fact, one of the biggest issues is just a lot of chronic fatigue that's going on. So I'm going to look into this a lot more detail. But I came across something that's pretty interesting, and I want to guys show this to you right here, because this is what's interesting. Is I looked up the National Institute of Health, the U.S. National Library of Medicine, where you can go and see clinical trials that are taking place. So this comes from a government website, clinicaltrials.gov. And this is what's interesting, is that they are, in fact, when you look at this, they are studying the methylation effects of COVID-19 infection and vaccinations. That's interesting, isn't it? So Cornell University is doing the study, and what they are looking for is to study. The study looks at the methylation patterns in individuals who have a baseline test taken of their DNA methylation patterns and their epigenome, and then a follow-up test after they have contracted SARS-CoV-2. And then the second part that is of the study is going to look at methylation patterns in individuals who have a baseline test taken of their DNA methylation patterns in their epigenome, and then a follow-up test after SARS-CoV-2 mRNA vaccine injection. Interesting, huh? So they are actually looking at how this changes your genetic expression, because remember, methylation has to do with repair of enzyme or of your DNA. Interesting, huh? Because if you are not methylating well, this is one of the things that can cause accelerated aging, damage of the DNA, promotion of tumors, things like that. But there's also a lot of other things that are involved with methylation. I know I've done a live in the past about how well are you methylating, but I find it interesting that they're looking at this post-COVID and post-vaccination to see if there's any change in genetic repair that is done by methylation. So that's not the purpose of why I came on today, but I thought something interesting for you maybe to look at. All right. Now, here's what's interesting, guys, is I saw this article come, and this is from a couple of days ago. And this article was on American Council of Science and Health. You can see that right there. And they said that Pfizer's COVID drug works wonders. And then here's how it works. Okay. Now, this goes over a lot of organic chemistry, which I absolutely didn't like. I appreciate that I took it in college. It was also the only class in 4 years that I got a B in. And it was very hard. It was very hard. So here's what they talk about. And they talk about this new drug. By the way, who comes out with it? Pfizer. Interesting. But it's called Paxlovid. And they say Pfizer's Paxlovid looks very promising in fighting COVID. It also provides a good opportunity to learn how enzyme inhibitors work for masochists only. So if you're a masochist, please keep watching. But I want to talk about basically this whole idea. And what this is that this drug is considered an antiviral. So basically what it does in so many words is that it inhibits the replication of the virus once it gets into the cell. See, how a virus works is that it needs a receptor. Without a receptor, a virus can't do anything. So you need a receptor on the cell membrane, which is considered the spike protein. And then you need a receptor known as that ACE receptor in order to take it into the cell. Once inside of the cell, this is where the virus, one virus, can now produce thousands of copies of the virus, then exit the cell, and then go and infect another cell. And this is how you get sick specifically with a virus. Or I should say, you only get sick if you don't have a proper immune response, specifically an innate immune system response. And so basically what they're doing with this drug is they are known as protease inhibitors, okay? So basically, in order for when a virus enters into the cell, there's specific cellular machinery known as the ribosomes that then start copying the genetic material of the virus. So it starts to make all of these different kinds of copies. And then you have these proteases, which basically are protein enzymes, which then snip down these specific genetic copies and are able to then bundle them up to reform a virus and then send it out to the rest of the body. So how this specific medication actually works is that it inhibits these protease enzymes so that basically it gets copied, but then it can't recombobulate into the virus. So that basically where the virus stops, it stops within the cell that is infected, or maybe the many cells that are infected specifically with the virus, so that it stops its replication. If you can stop the replication, then you can have the opportunity for your immune system to catch up and then to be able to kill off those virally infected cells, your natural killer cells, and your CD8 cells, which we've talked ad nauseum for a very long time. So they thought, well, look at how amazing this is. But I'm going to tell you guys something, is the whole idea with drugs and the inhibition of replicating viruses within the cell, antiviral medications, is really nothing new. They have been working on this for years. In fact, if you look at HIV, people who have had HIV, they started them on a cocktail of antivirals, preventing the replication of the virus going back 30 years or 40 years even. But there's other drugs that will inhibit the replication of a virus as well. And in fact, here's another one, which has gotten a lot of flack lately. But when you go to the National Institute of Health and you go to the National Library of Medicine, specifically pubmed.gov, they even talk about the FDA-approved drug ivermectin inhibits the replication of SARS-CoV-2 in vitro, which means inside of the body. Now, what's interesting is, as people ask me, they say, Dr. Nate, what do you think about ivermectin? And here's my opinion on this. My opinion is leave the fire department work in the hands of the doctors, okay? So I don't, and we talk about the fire department. And people say, well, what do you think about this? And I said, it's fire department care. And whatever's going to put out the fire, I guess I'm okay with. But what we're more concerned about is preventing you from having a fire. Or if you've had a fire, who's rebuilding your body back to even better than it was before you got sick? So, leave the fire department approach to the people who are fighting the fighters. These are the MDs. However, you can look at this and you can debate it all you want, is that there really is nothing new about Pfizer's new drug, especially when you have other medications that are considered antiviral that are inhibiting the replication of SARS-CoV-2. So it talks about ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Well, the thing is that why does Pfizer want to come out with this medication that probably won't work better than some of these other medications that can be used off-label? Because they're going to have a patent on it, and it's going to be 20 to 30 times more expensive, if not more, than other drugs like HCQ and ivermectin, okay? However, this is not specifically what I want to talk about and have the debate between this, because again, do you really need ivermectin if you in fact have a healthy immune system response? And this is why I always come back to asking this question: why is it that two people can be exposed to the same virus? One person gets devastated by it, and the other one has some symptoms for 3 or 4 days, and then after that is fine. It's the same virus, so it means the difference is not the environment, the difference is the actual host. And so this is why we're always talking about strengthen the host, strengthen the host, strengthen the host. Quit arguing about who can put the fire out better, because you don't need the fire department if the host is strong. However, when you look at this, I wanted to show you something really interesting, because the whole idea behind viral replicators, or things that are inhibiting viral replication, is nothing new. And I'm going to show you an example, okay? Is this one. I don't know if I still have it up or not, but guys, if you've ever had, the effects of basic amino acids and their derivatives on SARS-CoV-2 and influenza A virus infections. So guys, have you ever heard of an amino acid called L-lysine? Well, you know that if you have a herpes infection, that taking L-lysine can inhibit the replication of the virus, so that if you have a breakout of a cold sore, then basically what it'll do is it will decrease the time that you have that new infection that's going on. And then it just, because what it does is it inhibits the replication of that virus, specifically the herpes virus. And all it is a basic amino acid. Okay, so this is actually something, not anything that's necessarily new. And this is why, and they say, hey, take L-lysine and then, make sure that you're avoiding foods that have a high amount of arginine in it. Okay, because one will can exacerbate it, and the other one can inhibit the replication of the virus. However, I want to talk to you about something, because guys, when you look at the mechanism of action of these medications, they didn't come up with it on their own. Okay, let me say that again. They didn't come up with it on their own. Basically, what they did is they took mechanisms of actions that were available in plants, what God actually made, and then they make a synthetic component to it, and then they can then sell it for a lot more money. So I want to guys show you something that's really interesting, and I'm probably going to jump around a little bit, and I apologize. But when you look at this title, okay, so you look at this, screenshot that, memorize it, effectively inhibits SARS-CoV-2 replication by inhibiting, what did we talk about? The viral main protease, the ability to be able to clip down that specific genetic material and be able to bundle it up and then ship it out of the cell and then go infect a bunch of other cells. Now you may be saying, what is this? What on earth is this right here? Is this some special kind of drug? What on earth is it? But what I'm going to tell you what it is, and I'm going to look for it, is it's this, okay? It's this, and it's called licorice root extract. So think of this. Licorice root extract has the ability to be able to effectively inhibit SARS-CoV-2 replication, okay? How many of you have been taking licorice, okay? And specifically, this is why licorice root is so good when it comes to people who have lung infections specifically, okay? So when they looked at this and they looked at, how much they were giving, you can actually see that when they did this and applied licorice root, actually within a petri dish, and they found the different types of amounts that they looked at, and you saw that there's no infection, SARS-CoV-2 infection right here. When they gave 1 milligram per milliliter, you can see that there really is almost no infection that's going on. And so basically what they say is they say in so many words is that, wow, look at this, that herbal medicine revealed to be a promising option for the treatment of various viral infection. Okay. Wow. Look at this. We demonstrated that glycyrrhizin potentially inhibits SARS-CoV-2 replication in cell structure at subtoxic concentrations and identified the underlying mechanism. How did it work? Protease inhibitors. Okay. Wow. Can you imagine that? What God gave us is already there. It's already available. And guys, this is really nothing that's considered new under the sun, because they have known that licorice root actually is a potent antiviral, which they have been giving for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So this is why, when people say, what do you think about licorice, or what do you think about wormwood and its mechanism of action? What do you think about those things? Guys, all you have to do is run a search in PubMed, and you're going to see that there are wonderful, wonderful things that God gave us that are available when we are in a crisis, when we're in an emergency, and when we have a fire. So I love it when people say, how can you recommend those unregulated herbal supplements and unsubstantiated? And I say, everything that we do is substantiated, and it's in the literature. It just so happens that a lot of this stuff that are where they're actually being done are in different countries that don't have a lot of pharmaceutical influence. Okay. So just remember is that a lot of the pharmaceutical companies are really just copycatting God's design and claiming that they're the ones who came up with it, and then making a whole bunch of money off of that. And then not only that, making sure that they form a monopoly and poo-poo anything that is considered natural. So I want to ask you a question. If what I went over makes you mad, then ask yourself this question: why does it make you mad? Maybe because you might be realizing that God already gave us everything that we needed, really, outside of emergency crisis surgeries. God really did give us everything that we needed in order to be healthy, in order to be well, in order to thrive. We just have to start opening our eyes. What do you guys think? Let me know. And I know probably all of you are saying, where can I get my hands on this? And again, guys, I'll always go back to, if you can keep your barrier strong, if you can keep a healthy innate immune response, then you really don't have to rely as much on that adaptive immune system response like your CD4 and your CD8, because your body will handle the infection before it can become so systemic to have to rely on that innate or on that adaptive immune system. So, guys, it really comes down to keeping your immune system healthy. How do you keep your immune system healthy? Keep your barrier strong. Make sure that you're eating non-inflammatory food. Make sure you're not doing things that are destroying the gastrointestinal barriers. Make sure that you're doing the things that aren't causing liver inflammation, fatty liver. Make sure that that you're keeping your stressors down as much as possible. Make sure that you are resting. Make sure that you are recovering. Make sure that you don't have any physical stressors on the spine and on the nerve system, because, guys, most of your input that's going to the brain is actually coming from the joints of the spine, and it's powering the brain. So that's why you have to look at physical trauma. You have to look at chemical inflammation. You have to look at mental stress, all of those different things. And when you do that, the body is programmed to be healthy, to be alive, and to be well. That's the biggest thing. And that's why next week when we talk, I'm going to be talking about going over research, because I talked about diabetes, how the drugs, yeah, they lower blood sugar, but you still have type 2 diabetes. Other things that you can do in nature in order to help dig you out of a hole while you start working on causes. And that one herbal that we're going to talk about is called gymnema. Okay. So it's called gymnema. And in fact, I recommended it for someone today because they needed it, and because occasionally they get a little bit sassy with their lifestyle. Okay. So we're going to talk about that. It's going to be a huge eye opener. But then after that, we'll talk about, hey, here's really where the problem is lying. And here's how you start working on that from a nutrition perspective, from a stress perspective, and then also from an exercise perspective as well. So, guys, I just wanted to jump on with you and go over this with you. Hopefully it gave you a lot of input, a lot of insight as far as, when you get some of these medications. Remember, anytime that you see a medication, you will always see something in nature that will work better without the side effects. All right. So, guys, I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. I may tomorrow morning, if I am in the car traveling for my Thanksgiving festivities, I might jump on live and do a question and answer for maybe 45 minutes or so. So if you guys have any questions, you can drop them in the comments and I'll take a look with that. But I know if we have a lot of people asking questions all at once, I won't be able to get to all of them while I'm on the road. So, guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Always make sure to share this with people. And I hope you guys have a great, great, great Thanksgiving. Let me know what you're thankful for as well. I have a lot to be thankful for. And we will check in with you guys probably tomorrow. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Be well.